I was talking to an acquaintance recently, and he just joined a Masonic lodge.
Oh, interesting.
And he was just absolutely enamored with the theatrics of it all. I mean, he spent a good 20 minutes just describing the texture of the lambskin aprons.
The regalia, yeah. People get really caught up in that.
Totally. The weight of the jewels, the thrill of learning this secret handshake. To him, it was this, exclusive club, a sort of adult playground.
Where putting on the costume makes you feel like you're part of something.
Exactly. He showed me a photo of himself in the full getup, just beaming. But then I asked him a simple question.
Okay.
I asked what the rituals actually did for him, for his internal state. I said, how does using a tracing board or a 24-inch gauge change how you handle stress?
And what did he say?
He just gave me this blank stare, mumbled something about tradition and brotherhood, and then, immediately changed the subject back to an upcoming dinner.
That is such a perfect anecdote. It's a window into this huge cultural blind spot we have.
It was such a jarring disconnect. He's holding the tools, but he has no idea they were designed to build anything.
Right. We've inherited the shell of these rigorous systems, but we've completely lost the operating manual.
And that's the paradox, isn't it? We treat them like museum exhibits, but they were meant to be psychological technologies.
Rigorous ones. And you're right. It's the difference between wearing a costume and actually doing the work.
Because when you strip away the dining and the status, you're left with something. Well, something uncomfortable.
But necessary.
Exactly. A manual for attention in a world that is actively trying to fragment us.
And that's really the core of it. The world we live in is, it's designed to fragment human attention. It's not passive, it's active.
Which makes this kind of manual not just interesting, but essential.
It is. And that's why we have to explore these sources, the ones that show how these traditions actually function as a practical pedagogy.
For what exactly? What are they teaching?
For inner work, for emotional steadiness. And this is a huge one, for community resilience.
So our mission today for this deep dive is really to look past all the velvet ropes and the secret handshakes.
Yeah, we have to.
We need to get at that central theme, that difference between just performing a ritual for status.
The external show.
And actually engaging in the discipline, transformative practice of sustained inner attention.
The internal result. We're looking for the software that's hidden inside all that old hardware.
Okay, so let's unpack this interior curriculum. If the regalia and all the ritual objects aren't just quaint props, if they're genuine instruction sets, how do we even begin to read them?
Well, you said it. They are instruction sets for the soul. When you look at the fundamental tools of the craft, the gauge, the chisel, the tracing boards, they are not instruments of labor in the way we think.
They're not for building a cathedral out of stone.
No. They operate under this core principle that says they are keys to unlock the temple within. They're psychic tools, for refining your own personality.
Taking the rough stone of the self and making it perfect.
A perfect cube, exactly.
Yeah. I want to start with a 24-inch gauge. It seems so mundane, so simple. Just a ruler, basically. But you're saying it's radically opposed to modern life.
It's maybe the most radical tool because of its simplicity. Its internal function is about achieving absolute sovereignty over your time.
And by extension, your attention.
Precisely. The 24-inch gauge symbolizes the traditional division of the day into 3 equal dedicated parts.
Okay, what are they?
8 hours for work, 8 hours for rest, and 8 hours for service, study, or devotion.
8, 8, and 8. I mean, that's a profoundly rigid structure in a world where work now demands, 18 hours?
And rest is just scrolling social media in bed, and study is fragmented across headlines you barely read.
Right. So how does this simple gauge act as a cognitive firebreak against all that chaos?
It forces you to erect boundaries, not on your calendar, but in your mind. Let's take that anecdote of Kenji, the software developer in Shibuya.
In Tokyo, the heart of hyperconnectivity.
The absolute epicenter. His life was just a constant stream of alerts, deadlines, notifications, microtasks that left him feeling completely hollowed out.
He's the perfect embodiment of the digital attention crisis, where just being available is seen as being productive.
Totally. And he wasn't joining a group for status. He was desperate for silence, for structure. He wanted to reclaim his own internal territory.
So what happened when he encountered the 24-inch gauge?
In the ritual setting, it was paired with these very specific, intentional, repeated movements, memorization. And that practice demanded his total singular presence.
He couldn't check his Slack messages while doing it.
He couldn't be distracted at all. The microtasks that usually dominated his mind they had no room to enter.
So the tool isn't teaching him time management in the way a productivity app would?
Not at all. It's teaching him attention dedication. The gauge becomes this literal permission slip to erect boundaries inside his own head.
It's an anchor.
It's a solid anchor in a completely fluid digital existence. It's ancient, tangible structure. And that's the sophisticated pedagogy at work here, using a simple tool to force a return to deliberate, sustained attention.
That reframes the whole thing. We're so busy optimizing our output, we forget the input, that dedicated attention. Okay, so let's move to the tracing boards. These sound much more complex, more symbolic.
They are. They're these complex pictorial diagrams used for contemplation.
And this gets to the hidden curriculum of repetition. Why is that work described as involving friction? That sounds unpleasant.
Well, it is, and that's the point. This operates completely counter to the modern mindset of efficiency and quick fixes.
So what do these boards show?
They depict the layout of the metaphorical temple. You see symbolic objects, pillars, stars, the checkerboard floor, the working tools themselves. They're visual aids for meditation.
But just staring at an image for a long time, I mean, to a mind conditioned by TikTok, that sounds agonizingly boring.
The boredom is the friction. That's the key. Think about the story of the expatriate who went to Tokyo looking for some kind of instant revelation.
It's a secret key to inner peace, downloaded right into her brain.
Right. And instead, she's given this mental chisel, the tracing board, and told to just stare at a static image of, say, a pillar, and to repeat a phrase over and over for weeks.
Her first reaction must have been, this is a total waste of time.
She was profoundly frustrated. She thought, what am I even doing? I already know the words. She was expecting new information.
But the goal was never new information.
Never. The goal was to train the mind to stay put. The friction is her own impatient, restless, reactive mind fighting against the repetition.
So the repetition is like a grindstone. By forcing her mind to keep coming back to that boring symbol, she's actually polishing the mind itself.
Exactly. The ritual is an exercise in endurance. It changes how her mind processes information, not the information itself. It's about transforming a raw, reactive mind into a polished, responsive one.
It teaches you that real psychological change takes time, and patience, and discipline.
Which is a radical act in our culture. This is why these methods are so powerful. They demand the boring, repetitive effort that actually changes your nervous system.
So the harder it is to focus on the boring thing, the better the training. That makes sense. Okay, so how does this intense individual inner work translate outward into community?
That's the next logical step. The sociological value of these practices is enormous, especially in a small, in-person practice group, like the Light Academy in Tokyo.
It's designed as a sanctuary, right? A conscious response to all the isolation we feel.
It's so much more than a social club because the connection is built on shared vulnerability and effort, not on networking or superficial stuff.
Tell me more about that.
Well, think of that young man in the accounts who had only ever socialized through digital avatars.
Terrified of real, unmediated intimacy.
Completely. And when he joined this small, disciplined group, he found that the connection wasn't built on status or trying to be cool. It was built on a common intent.
And that common intent is moving philosophically from darkness to light.
Yes. And when they performed rituals together, breathing in sync, doing difficult movements with a shared purpose, he experienced what's called a being event.
A being event.
They were co-creating a space of pure intentionality, the shared effort of mastering a difficult internal discipline. It creates a bond that's so much stronger than anything you can get online.
So true community comes from shared effort, from vulnerability, not just from having the same hobbies.
Exactly. It transforms these groups from being just social clubs back to their original function, centers for deep, shared psychological and spiritual work.
This all leads to a really fascinating historical question. If these groups were originally all about this deep spiritual understanding, why did Freemasonry, for instance, shift over time? Why did it become mainly an institution of moral education and, well, status?
That shift is a key part of the story. You're right, that spiritual focus was incredibly dominant from, say, 1717 through about 1780.
But then something changed.
It did. As it moved into the 19th century, it just accumulated all these layers of social status, bureaucracy, moral codes. A lot of it was to reflect the rigidness of the Victorian era, to make it acceptable to the mainstream.
And the deep experiential part got pushed to the side.
It was often marginalized, yeah, in favor of networking and just, civic duty.
So we have to ask, what was this initial powerful spiritual understanding that was so compelling, that made some of the brightest minds of 18th century Europe meet in rooms above pubs to learn it?
It was revolutionary.
Yeah.
And it answered a massive theological and philosophical question that was tearing through the intellectual world at the time.
Which was?
The immortality of the soul.
Wait, they were questioning if the soul was immortal. I thought that was just foundational Christian doctrine.
It was doctrine, but Enlightenment rationalism was pushing back hard. People were arguing that maybe the soul was material, that it just died with the body.
And writing about that was dangerous.
It was considered blasphemous. There was this profound crisis of faith among the gentry, the intellectuals. They needed proof. Not just dogma. They needed something they could experience.
A crisis demanding tangible evidence. And right into the middle of this very charged, skeptical environment, a catalyst arrives.
The perfect catalyst. A high-status Chinese Taoist Mandarin named Shen Fuzong.
His arrival in England must have been a huge event.
Unprecedented. We're talking around 1687. He's an envoy from the southern Ming court, dressed head to toe in rare silks, treated like a huge deal. And crucially, he meets with the most influential minds in London.
People like Isaac Newton.
Isaac Newton, the chemist Robert Boyle, the head librarian at the Bodleian, the intellectual elite.
So what did this Mandarin teach them that was so earth-shattering?
He described the experiential nature of Taoist practices. It wasn't about blind belief. It was about knowledge, a philosophical practice. And specifically, he told them about advanced internal cultivation that allowed practitioners to have out-of-body experiences.
OBEs. Conscious astral travel.
Yes. And for these intellectuals who were debating the very nature of the soul, this was just extraordinary.
Because he wasn't just offering a theory, he was offering a technique, a way to prove that the soul exists separate from the body.
Precisely. If your soul could consciously leave the body, travel, and then return, all without the physical body dying, well, that's it. That's your phenomenal, personal, undeniable proof.
It's the ultimate answer to the crisis.
It resolved the deepest theological crisis of the era.
And this teaching, you're saying, became the hidden seed of esoteric Freemasonry.
The history points very strongly in that direction.
Right.
You have three key figures from Newton's intellectual circles: George Payne, John de Saguiers, and Anthony Sayre.
The first three Grand Masters?
Exactly. They form a society specifically to investigate this teaching, but they needed a structure to hide and transmit these radical concepts.
So they adopted the existing structure of the operative Masons.
Right. The working tools, the lodge layout, it was all respectable. But they layered this hidden, experiential Chinese teaching right on top of that framework.
So the physical tools became symbolic blueprints for an inner Taoist practice. The operative Masons gave them the packaging.
But Taoist philosophy provided the transformative spiritual core.
The evidence for this must be more than just circumstantial.
Oh, it is. Through cross-cultural ritual analysis, researchers have found a staggering number of correspondences.
I think the sources said something like 28 documented parallels between early Masonic ritual and Taoist initiation rites.
28. It's an incredible number.
Can you give us some concrete examples? Because a number is one thing, but the conceptual symmetry is what's really compelling.
Absolutely. Let's get into the details. First, both traditions have a strikingly similar three-step initiatory process. The journey to light.
In Masonry, that's the 3 degrees: entered apprentice, fellowcraft, master Mason.
And in the Yiguan Dao tradition, there's a parallel sequence: initial awakening, deeper cultivation, and then final spiritual attainment. The structure is the same.
What about the officers in the ritual?
The parallelism there is both structural and functional. In a Masonic lodge, you have the master, who sits in the east. He's the source of light and wisdom, and he transmits that to the candidate.
Okay.
In the Taoist tradition, the senior officer is literally named the light-transmitting officer.
Oh.
He transmits the essential knowledge and energy from the Tao, the ultimate reality, to the initiate. They perform the identical spiritual function.
That's a direct link. What about the secret stuff? The handshakes and words?
Both traditions rely heavily on secrecy and passing knowledge through experience, not just texts. In the Taoist rites, they teach what they call the 3 treasures.
Which are?
Secret words, hand signs, and specific gestures that identify one initiate to another. Early Masonic rituals use the exact same methods. Secret words, grips, signs of recognition.
Even the core symbol, the square and compass, seems to align with Taoist principles.
It's a perfect philosophical match. The balance between the square, which is earth, matter, structure,
Yeah.
and the compass, which is heaven, spirit, infinite possibility.
It's not just a moral lesson. It's about balancing the physical and spiritual worlds.
Precisely. And finally, on a philosophical level, both are fundamentally a philosophy of life. They're centered on knowledge and wisdom, not on dogma or worshiping a specific deity.
It's a way of living.
Supported by deep philosophy.
So if this light is being transmitted in both traditions, what's the ultimate goal? It can't just be about becoming a better person, can it? Is there a higher experiential objective?
The sources argue very strongly that there is. The shared goal of the opening of the soul through this transmission of light. And the core secret, the radical claim, is that the third-degree ritual secretly conveys a technique for astral travel, for an OBE.
The very practice that Shen Fuzong introduced, that's a huge claim. We're moving way beyond moral instruction here and into actual altered states of consciousness.
We are.
How would they hide a technique like that inside a public-facing ritual?
The ritual itself is a complex theatrical allegory. The whole third degree, with its symbolic death and resurrection, is basically a mnemonic framework, a staged instruction set.
So the movements, the words, the postures, it's all a script.
For those who have the esoteric key, yes. The sequence of events acts as a script to induce the experience of the soul temporarily separating from the body. It's that life-changing experience because it provides the proof of immortality that anchors your whole inner life.
And if an initiate actually experiences their soul existing outside their body, how does that create a unifying social vision? How does that lead to global unity?
Because the experience completely obliterates the ego's attachments and prejudices.
How so?
When a person consciously has an out-of-body experience, the first thing you realize is the loss of all physical differentiation, just consciousness.
A speck of light.
And that speck of light has no race, no religion, no sex, no age, no creed.
None of it. So when you encounter another speck of light, another person's consciousness, you can't differentiate them based on their appearance or their status. You can't hold a prejudicial point of view.
It's an undeniable experiential realization of shared humanity. Exactly. It's spiritual enlightenment applied directly to ethics, a profound shift in identity. You realize you're fundamentally perfect, just having a physical experience, and that everyone else shares that same core essence.
And that changes everything about how you interact with the world.
Everything.
This focus on inner attention is so directly relevant today because it's battling such a powerful opponent, the digital world. Let's transition from those ancient rituals to the modern, formal study of attention.
It's a perfect transition because modern life operates against this perfect storm of challenges. We're dealing with two massive pressures, hyperconnectivity and what's called digital disarray.
Hyperconnectivity is that always-on feeling, right? No boundaries. But let's dig into digital disarray. What are the dimensions of that chaos?
It breaks down into three interconnected components, and they all undermine our ability to do steady, meaningful work. The first is pretty obvious: distraction.
Information overload, the myth of multitasking.
Which we know is just a cognitive illusion. Your brain is just switching context really fast, and it costs you time and energy. It makes deep work feel almost impossible.
Okay, what's the second component?
The second is disorder. This is about the quality of information. It's the cognitive chaos of trying to disentangle reliable information from misinformation, disinformation, fake news.
We're constantly questioning the ground we stand on.
Exactly. And the third dimension is disconnection. This is the difficulty of engaging constructively, ethically, with ourselves, with others, and with the world.
When we're fragmented, we lose the capacity for real dialogue.
And for collaborative problem solving. It's a crisis of our internal capacity meeting an environment that's designed to undermine it.
So how is the modern educational framework trying to fight back? What's the modern equivalent of those ancient rituals?
They're introducing a concept called attentional literacy, or AL.
Attentional literacy.
It's a robust framework that fuses insights from digital literacies, like how media works, with contemplative pedagogy and mindfulness. The goal is to move you from being a passive consumer to having active agency over your own focus.
Okay, we need to unpack the full definition of that. It sounds important.
It is. The full definition is multifaceted. AL is the ability to notice and understand how your attention is solicited by yourself, others, and the environment.
So, awareness first.
Right. Then, to intentionally focus and sustain that attention by choice. Then to become aware of and remain non-judgmental toward new perspectives.
Right.
And finally, to consider your own impact on the whole attentional ecosystem.
That's complex, but it really mirrors the stages we saw in the ancient practices. Awareness, focus, perspective, and then integration back into the community.
It's the same path. And educators recommend guiding students through 4 key focus points, often sequentially.
Okay, let's detail those. First is awareness and noticing.
This is fundamental. It's learning to observe your own internal environment. Like when you pick up your phone, do you notice the urge before you act on it? Do you see how the platform is designed to get you hooked?
It's about metacognition, thinking about your own thinking.
Exactly. Then you move to the practical work. Focus and intentional choice.
This is the sustained effort, the modern 24-inch gauge.
Right. It's the ability to pick one thing, a text, a task, a conversation, and sustain your attention on it, overriding that constant impulse to switch.
The third point, openness and curiosity, that sounds like the result of the first 2 steps.
It is. When your mind is frantic, you're reactive, you're judgmental. But when you can sustain your attention, you create space for non-judgmental observation, for curiosity.
You can actually listen instead of just planning what you're going to say next.
Impossible otherwise. And finally, you connect it all back to the world, the consideration of the attentional ecosystem.
Acknowledging that your attention affects everyone else.
It's reciprocal. Are you demanding constant availability from your colleagues? Are you spreading unverified information? It turns personal focus into a matter of collective well-being.
This really is a modern manual for inner work. But how do teachers actually implement it, given all the institutional pressures they're under?
The approach has to be holistic. They have to integrate their personal, pedagogical, and professional practices. You can't teach it if you don't live it.
They have to walk the path themselves.
Absolutely. That means engaging in their own sustained contemplative practices, meditation, deep reading, even just offline hobbies like walking or gardening to create balance.
But the sources suggest that the institutions themselves often get in the way.
The barriers are huge, and they're often systemic. The 3 biggest ones are, first, the design of educational platforms, which prioritize speed over depth. Second, institutional pressure that limits time for slow research or deep reflection. And third, just the pervasive feeling of being overworked, which leaves no time for personal practice.
The very systems designed for learning are actually incentivizing fragmentation.
It's a huge internal contradiction. The demands for productivity are at odds with the slowness required to cultivate attention.
So the core goal for students isn't just about learning facts, it's about developing skills and attitudes.
Exactly. Skills like being able to read a long, complex text and stick with it. And attitudes like being comfortable just being alone with your own thoughts, or being able to still your mind without some external stimulation.
These are completely countercultural skills today, but they're identical in spirit to the friction created by those tracing boards.
Precisely the same principle.
Okay, so whether we call it ancient ritual or modern attentional literacy, the core challenge is mastering that internal landscape. And when that work is successful, it leads to transformation. Let's define what that means, because this isn't just about changing your habits.
No, we're entering the realm of transformative learning, or TL, and this is about a full perspective transformation across 3 deep dimensions.
Let's go through them.
First is psychological transformation, changing your fundamental understanding of who you are. Second is convictional transformation, revising, or even overturning your core beliefs about the world. And third is behavioral, making permanent lifestyle changes that reflect that new understanding.
It's an irreversible shift.
A comprehensive alteration of your whole way of being.
Now, the theory's originator, Jack Mezirow, he saw this as a rational process, right? You have a disorienting dilemma, and you logically reflect on your assumptions.
He did, but that's only half the story. The rational critique can tell you why your old beliefs aren't working, but it can't give you a vision for a new self.
And that's where the intuitive symbolic world comes back in.
Absolutely. Robert Boyd's work is the critical counter-perspective here. He argued, coming from depth psychology, that real transformation is often triggered by calling on extra-rational sources, symbols, images, archetypes, to create personal meaning.
To see both. The critical analysis to tear down the old, and the symbolic framework to build the new.
You need both. And the ancient rituals provided that integration perfectly. They were structured, rational steps that led to an intensely effective symbolic experience.
Which brings us right to Carl Jung and the necessity of what he called the symbolic life. What does that mean practically?
It means consciously working with symbols and images to find the true meaning, the essence, the telos, the ultimate purpose of who you are.
It's the opposite of what he called reductive literalization.
Exactly, where you reduce a complex experience to nothing but Love is nothing but a chemical reaction. You lose the meaning. The symbolic life, on the other hand, infuses your existence with beauty, meaning, and synchronicity.
So why are symbols so uniquely powerful in this process? What can an image do that logic can't?
Because symbols contain everything. Everything repressed, everything desired, everything hoped for by the entire human psyche. They are the tools of exploration for that inward journey. They bridge the rational world of the ego and the vast, meaningful world of the unconscious.
Can you give us a tangible example? You mentioned Jung's own experience with stones. How did that symbol guide him?
For Jung, starting in his childhood, the symbol of stones represented something permanent, eternal, indestructible. It was a mirror for the core of the self, the soul.
And it wasn't just a metaphor for him?
No, it was teleological. It pointed toward his life's purpose. It guided him to physically build his sanctuary, the Bollingen Tower, over decades. He spent days carving inscriptions into stones.
So the symbol led to a behavioral transformation. He created a physical space that reflected his inner reality.
It was a physical manifestation of his own individuation process. And the symbol stayed with him right to the end. Just days before he died, he dreamt of a great white stone with an inscription. "This shall be a sign unto you of wholeness and oneness."
The symbol had reached its conclusion.
It had guided him all the way to the final stage of integration.
That's incredibly powerful. But for someone listening today trying to manage a fragmented life, how do we start living this symbolic life?
The first rule is flexibility and humility. Jung always emphasized that you have to entertain the opposite perspective in your mind for any situation. Allow for the precious gift of doubt.
To avoid getting rigid.
Exactly. As for practical exercises, one thing you can do is engage with your environment for 30 minutes a day as if you're in a lucid dream.
What does that mean?
You're fully aware, but you add a layer of interpretation. You look at everything around you, a piece of rubble, a bird, an object in your room, and you reflect. What does this mean symbolically as it enters my awareness right now?
Yeah.
What is my inner self trying to communicate with this?
Treating the external world as a mirror for the internal.
Yes. And another really effective tool is to create a symbol tray for a specific life issue you're dealing with.
At the little altar.
Sort of. If you're struggling with a conflict, a job change, a relationship issue, you select items from your environment that symbolize different aspects of it. A heavy stone for the burden, a feather for freedom, a coin for the money pressure.
You externalize the conflict with physical objects.
Yes. And you put them on a tray and you play with them. You rearrange them. You reflect on their relationship to each other. You look at it every day, maybe add or remove things until a shift happens in the arrangement that symbolizes a resolution you can accept.
That's active imagination, but applied to the physical world.
It's psychological technology in its purest form. It connects right back to the function of the gauge or the tracing board. It's all about using tangible things to do inner work.
We started this whole deep dive talking about the friction and the hard work of ancient ritual and contrasting that with the sort of easy consumption of the modern wellness industry.
And that's the core distinction. Transformation is entirely about effort and discipline, not status or consumption.
Spiritual alchemy is simple but difficult.
Deceptively so. It's just repeated small acts of discipline that actually change your nervous system. Modern wellness is often just capitalist indulgence buying a retreat or an app. This is built on shared effort.
And the result is a real lived shift.
Precisely. It makes you less reactive, less fragmented, more able to handle the complex responsibilities of life, grief, anger, marriage, work. It's a slow, methodical rewiring of the self.
So what's the ultimate conclusion here for civilization just grappling with this unprecedented level of distraction?
The radical ask is this. We have to move away from competing in conspicuous consumption and return to the hard work of shaping attention and steadiness.
We have to rebuild those structures of attention.
Yes. The radical humility of building these little temples of attention in small groups, with personal ritual, with steady practice, it gives us something far more valuable than wealth or status.
The capacity to act and feel from a steady, centered place.
And that steady center is the rarest and most necessary asset we can have in a chaotic world.
Thank you for guiding us through this extraordinary manual for attention. We've covered everything from ancient Taoist practices and 18th century intellectual debates to modern contemplative pedagogy and Jungian psychology, and they all point to the same truth. The secret manual for transformation is written in sweat, repetition, and a disciplined focus on the inner world. Thank you for taking this deep dive with us.